And hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the afternoon panel discussion. My name is Brian Curran, and I am delighted really to be here today as International Risk Leader for Elavon and board member of Elavon to moderate a discussion on what I consider to be one of, if not the most important question for industry, and that is, what is the future of payments? Whilst I'm afraid I have no crystal ball today, I am delighted to have a hugely esteemed and knowledgeable panel of experts to provide us their insight into this topic. In particular, we'll be using today's panel's discussion and session to explore the potential of instant payments, open banking, and a combination of both. Where are we on the journey for these to become the new normal, and what can we do to foster growth? We'll also be looking for the interrelationship with these and the digital euro, and many topics in between. So let me take this opportunity to introduce today's panel. From the European Commission, we've Katarzyna Kobylinska-Hilliard, Policy Officer, Unit B3, DG FISMA. From the European Central Bank, we've Holger Neuhaus, Head of Division, DG Market Infrastructure and Payments. From the European Payments Council, we've Etienne Gauss, Director General of the EPC. From Amex, we've Francois Steck, Director of Government Affairs, and representing the Polish Payments Institution Association and EPIP board member, we've Christoph Karas. So first of all, thank you all very much for your time today. You're very welcome and delighted you're here to participate in this important discussion. As set out in the introduction, we have a very busy and full packed agenda, so we might dive straight into it. And we might start today's discussion with the views of the European Commission. So good afternoon to you, Katarzyna. Instant payments is the flagship initiative for the Commission retail payment strategy. Given that, I'd be very interested in hearing the Commission's view on how instant payments is developing in Europe. Will these become the new normal, and how far are we on that journey?
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you very much for having me today. And hello to everybody. Well, I mean, I am in a quite fortunate situation attending this panel today that Commissioner McGuinness has given her speech earlier today, and she has confirmed that the rollout of instant payments remains to be indeed a priority for the European Commission. And she also was quite clear on the fact that although there is some progress with the rollout of instant payments in the EU, it is quite slow. And now we need to ask ourselves, can we wait that long? Can we afford to wait any longer? Or, will we be able to reap all the benefits that instant payments offer to us if we wait on the sideway, or whether we should take a more proactive approach? And we heard from the Commissioner that this rollout, the accelerated rollout of instant payments in the EU is a serious issue, and it needs to be addressed in a serious manner. And now, what it means in practice, well, you know that the Commission work program has announced an initiative on instant payments is planned for mid-next year, mid-2022. And the Commission services are working now full speed on an impact assessment to determine exactly what is necessary and what is proportionate to accelerate the rollout of instant payments in the EU. So we've done a lot of activities, and I also wanted to thank all the stakeholders. Many of you are either in the panel or amongst the audience today who have contributed to our consultative activities. There has been a lot of fact-finding exercises that we've carried out this year, consultations, but also meetings and workshops and webinars with various stakeholders with the member states, and we carried out a study. So all these activities have provided us with wealth of information and knowledge and insight. And we have pinpointed the 4 areas that the impact assessment will be focusing on, or is focused on. Of course, the first one is a no-brainer. It's the adherence to the scheme. This is, of course, a crucial element in this network business. Any gaps, bigger or smaller, are a problem or may create frictions, and they do create frictions. So progress, we feel, needs to be accelerated in regards of the adherence of the PSPs to SCT Inst scheme. But adherence is not enough. It's not the only thing that is missing, according to our analysis. We see markets where we have quite a large number of PSPs participating. Theoretically, quite a large number of accounts are covered by or connected to instant payments, and yet the volumes of instant payments are actually quite low. So we did identify other areas. We do believe that the pricing for the users plays a very important role. It really has to be reasonable to not to create barriers for using instant payments. Of course, we have to also take into account that it is a commercial activity, and we are fully aware of that. So this is a very delicate balance that we need to find between those objectives. Consumers and users, they have to feel reassured. The Commissioner talked about it today. Of course, there's a lot of provisions on fraud prevention already in the payments legislation. I mean, the strong customer authentication, we're just sort of coming to an end of this quite painful process of implementing and rolling out SCA. But fraud is evolving, and there's other types of frauds or other types of situations where users may be exposed to losses, and we need to take full account of that. And of course, we are aware of the regulatory obstacles that may exist, and sanction screening being one of them. So these are the areas that we are looking into. But I would like to stress really at this point that this is a very complex and multifaceted area. It's not a kind of a linear situation, and there's a lot of efforts going on, a lot of work put into the rollout of instant payments by organizations represented in this panel as well. I mean, we have the ECB, who plays a crucial role in ensuring the infrastructures and their interoperability. We have the EPC, of course, who delivered the scheme in the first place and who are very actively promoting the scheme. We have a lot of work under the auspices of the Euro Retail Payments Board to look in the overlay instant payment solutions and technical specifications and interoperability. And of course, we have a lot of market initiatives, private initiatives that are very crucial. And so I think what is very important to say is that what we strive to do is to really identify the areas where we as the regulator, as the Commission, can really provide a useful catalyst and provide a useful role where we see that the progress through, let's say, natural market forces is not fast enough or is not accelerating sufficiently, and where we really can help the market to then deliver solutions and for players to innovate and compete. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and very insightful answer. And maybe just to touch on one of the things about the role of the ECB. So I may use that as a segue to get the ECB's perspective and get the views of Holger Neuhaus. So good afternoon to you, Holger. Very welcome this afternoon. So the ECB has previously looked at what is preventing the euro area achieving full rollout of instant payments. I'd be interested in hearing the ECB's perspective on how to make instant payments the new normal in Europe, and what's the role in the ECB in achieving this?
Yeah, I think it's easy, actually, at least easy to be said, less easy to implement. I would argue, because I think one of the key points is that it needs to work, and the other thing is that it must be attractive enough to be wanted. So how does one translate it and operationalize that? So for the working, one of the key points is, of course, that it has to work in a similar way that actually the current SCT is working. So that actually you don't have to think about, can I reach that other party, or actually, can I do it myself? Can I actually make instant payments? And the other one is, can I reach everybody? So as soon as one has to think about it and deal with rejections or so on that basis, that would not work. And that is actually so to ensure the interoperability as a necessary condition on the infrastructure level. But that, as I said, is actually a necessary, not a sufficient condition. So for it to become sufficient and for instant payment to become the new normal, there will have to be much more work. For example, I mean, in particular, PSPs would also have to develop on the service level, whether it's the apps acquiring services, thinking of how to acquire those customers, offering new business opportunities, which of course are also possible with this new one, because now it's instant payment. I mean, it's clear that with that one you can actually react and offer services, get payments for services with really different user experience. So that would be actually very helpful. Yeah, cheaper acquiring, I've said also before. So that also smaller merchants, for them, it's attractive to offer that. So that actually also helps to be in the new normal. And of course, also there are like migration of current cash transactions, especially P2P, to also electronic panels. Other fields are that it becomes very attractive because of e-invoicing. And other parts. So, I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, just illustrations, but all those things need to be worked on. Also important for those nice additional or new services to work is actually, in my view, the key aspect there is also that there's enough standardization and also a kind of interoperability, because if you have good services but cannot connect to clients, for example, from other countries, it would not be good. I mean, an Austrian who would go to the Louvre, where everybody else is actually getting a request to pay upon entry and makes the access very easy, or to any other museum anywhere else. I mean, it would not be good if then there are different standards, and then it would actually not be possible for them to actually also get the request to pay, and then they have to enter a queue. So those things would not make it a new normal, or rather, actually having these standardization, interoperability of some sort. I mean, at least at the basic level and at a technical level, that would also be key for actually offering such really attractive, successful services.
Okay, and thank you very much. Very, very insightful answer. So much appreciated. And maybe take the opportunity then to get the view or get an EPC perspective on it. So Etienne, good afternoon to you. So Etienne, the EPC has led and coordinated the rollout of SEPA Instant across Europe. There are in excess of 2,300 participating PSPs in SCT Instants. Given that and your knowledge, I'd be really interested in hearing your view on where you believe instant payments is going, obstacles presenting further growth, and what the EPC is doing to continue to drive this growth.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me again, and also for the excellent partnership that the EPC is enjoying with EPIF. So indeed, I will start first with a sort of status update on SCT Instant, and you will not be surprised that it will sound a bit more upbeat than some of the previous speakers today. But I think SCT Instant is clearly anchored and firmly anchored in the European payments landscape. And I will give you just a few numbers. Taking the third quarter volume, it's more than 10% of all Euro credit transfers. So on an annual basis, this already represents more than 2 billion transactions. So this is really something significant. I know that there are, of course, quite some differences across countries yet, but I think it's moving absolutely in the right direction. The curve has a steep slope and is continuing to grow that way. As you said, there are more than 2,300 PSPs participating in the scheme. So and they are coming from 24 countries. And actually, we will soon announce the 25th one. So growth is there also in terms of adherence. And more importantly, if you look at the euro area, where it has to start, because we know that PSPs from outside the euro area will only join when there is sufficient coverage in the euro area. And as far as the euro area is concerned, we already register more than 30% of the PSPs that are adhering to the scheme. But beyond those adherence numbers, which in our view are too much focus on, we have to look at actually the business dimension of SCT Instant and what is the proportion of payment accounts that are really reachable and usable with ICT Instant. And that's where we are very proud to note that currently we already have 14 countries where we have a vast majority of the payment accounts that are reachable for ICT Instant. And we have all the signs pointing in the direction of more countries falling into that category. So we really believe that even though we are not there yet fully, we acknowledge that the trajectory that has been done has been remarkable. And above this, it's also important to say that ICT Instant works very well. So, I mean, over 99% of all transactions are taking less than 5 seconds. So it's really a sterling performance, and even the vast majority is even less than 3 seconds. And that is certainly boding well for new use cases, to which I will come in a second. So in other words, I understand that the number of people are impatient. I think this is totally warranted, but nevertheless, we believe that the market will lead us there. We have also taken into account the specific position of some small niche players, which may have a hard business case to invest in ICT Instant for a few transactions a day, and for which maybe high value payment schemes and payment systems may actually play the job much more efficiently. But we, of course, remain totally focused on promoting, getting more PSPs on board, and that's something that we believe we will reach within a year or two. And of course, DPC has not just launched a scheme, maintain a scheme that is the ICT Instant scheme. We have also developed a number of other schemes. So Request to Pay, which has been mentioned already by several scheme participants. So we are going to publish the second version of the rulebook. So it's a 3-year effort, and we will soon be able to announce the first scheme participants, because they are knocking at our door now, that they see that the scheme is going to be enriched with new functionalities, also with API as a new channel. So we are actually trying indeed to cater for market needs and for the way the market evolves, technology speaking. We also introduce a proxy lookup service, probably a bit prematurely, because that was probably a bit putting the cart before the horse, but we were responding to requests that we were getting. But nevertheless, this is an important tool for making payment initiation, especially for consumers, very convenient. And of course, we have also been working on trying to ensure interoperability of ICT Instant when used with a mobile device. And we have published interoperability guidance. We are going to publish QR code specifications for public consultation, and we will also soon launch a public consultation on one leg out transaction, so incoming, outgoing transactions involving one of the legs being outside of SEPA. So a lot of things that we are doing. So and indeed, to reap the full potential of ICT Instant, we need to be able to use it in new use cases, as was mentioned by several, and DPC can only do a limited number of things. We can offer a toolbox, that's what we're trying to do, but of course solutions need to be provided by PSPs, and of course we believe that there is a need for a regulatory level playing field and for removing regulatory obstacles, and that's of course where the role of public authorities is key, as has been mentioned. And finally, and I will stop there, I believe that we may have a new baby in the cradle of DPC soon. So based on a board decision to be taken next week, we may actually start working on the SEPA payment account access scheme, following up on the work of the RPB working group on SEPA payment account scheme. So we will, if the decision is taken, of course, start as always in a fully stakeholder mode, a multi-stakeholder mode, work on this scheme, which will actually help cater in a harmonized way for functionalities beyond PSD2, but always related to the payment account. So watch the space. There will be some more news next week about that. But so we're working a lot, but we can only bring water to the horses. It's the horses that decide to drink. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eddie, and I look forward to that news next week. And maybe just to get a view from a payment institution perspective, I might turn to Krzysztof Curran from the Polish Association from Payment Institutions. So good afternoon to you, Krzysztof.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We've heard some really insightful and thoughtful and thorough comments on instant payments, challenges and progresses made there. Just to maybe expand it a little further, I'd welcome maybe from your perspective, representing payment institutions, what you see as the potential for open banking and instant payments in combination, and what are the mass drivers for adoption to make it a success?
Thank you very much for this question. So indeed, I would like to answer mostly from the perspective of the EPIF membership. They are mostly like local memberships in the local association. They are mostly merchant services providers. So if I'm commenting on the combination of the open banking and instant payments, it mostly how it impacts on the services for merchants. It's important to note because a completely different scenario and the pros and cons are visible when you think of combination of open banking and instant payments in something that originates with P2P. But going to my preferred area of answer. So the natural observation and natural result is what, at least how I feel it and perceive it, is that the acquirers cease to process money. If the instant payment is really good, and it is, like we have just heard, it's seconds, not minutes, it's seconds. So if instant payments is okay, and we are fortunate enough to have PIS and AIS in one and the same technology and in one and the same regulatory approach, this means that acquirements may stop processing payment for merchants in the sense that they do authorizations, they get the funds, and they later transfer funds to merchants' account. But they just initiate PIS transaction on one hand and wait until the funds arrive at merchant's bank, and via the AIS functionality, they read they confirm that the funds have arrived, and that's it. Which means that there's lots of risk removed, because now you no longer handle funds. You have more simplistic diagrams and flow of transactions, so less you don't have to care about money in the sense of funds. You have less AML intermediaries, so less AML risk. It's rather the soft risk, the reconciliation that may hit you, but in principle the risk is diminished. It's narrower. So in principle there's lots of benefits under one and the very primary condition that instant payments indeed work. So it's not minutes, it's seconds. So the normal time that the user in e-commerce is happy to wait for the confirmation. But having said this, what does it mean? Where is the value of the merchant service providers in the time of the instant payments and open banking? It's in reconciliation. So you mostly care about that the transaction has proper title, proper unique identifier, and so on. But again, having said this, it's not sufficient. We need to differentiate a bit more, to dig a bit deeper, because it is different in the country, in the market, where the users already use non-card payments. Like my country, where the cards are actually leaving the scene. In internet in Poland, we pay with BLIK, so which is sort of P2P payment with e-commerce capabilities, or we pay with pay by links. And in this scenario, we have no payments guarantee, we have no chargebacks, and so on. And nevertheless, people are happy to use it. Which means that if there is the combination of instant bank and open banking, we can immediately switch to this part. We need not that much more functionality. But on the other hand, if you have markets where cards dominate the e-commerce, it's a bit more challenging. So I expect that the transformation to processing instead of handling money will be much more difficult and will be dependent upon additional functionalities. Because in the card space, the simple movement of money is not the full history. It's rather the value of chargebacks, of MIT transactions, of the pre-authorization, and so on, which builds up the value of the payment. And instant payments today doesn't offer all of these functionalities. And this is where, for example, the SPAA, so the SEPA Payment Account Access Scheme, enters the scene. We work hard on adding the functionalities we know from card space to the PIS service. And if combined then with the instant payment, then we deliver a service comparable to card payments today. And then we arrive at a place where indeed the acquirer may stop processing money and just processing information, eliminating the risk of money. So this is my take, where the combination of open banking and instant payments and how it can end up. If the question is what is the main driver, then of adoption, because indeed there is a clear problem of adopting by ASPSP. We have worked lots. We have spent lots of time in all the subsequent work groups, and still I'm afraid the ASPSPs are not ready to be fully supportive. And I have taken much time to consider what is the exact reason, and my personal take is that actually what we have done with the open banking in the EU is that it was never a deal for ASPSPs. And this is why a deal in the sense that someone gets something, I get something, and this is how we proceed. And at the same time, it wasn't something beneficial for users, because if you look in the past, there are different regulations that was detrimental to ASPSP, but did provide some benefit to users. And that was more or less acceptable by the ASPSPs. Now it was not a deal for them, and it was not a direct benefit for users. So the question is, if we, for example, look at open finance and even further, so what should we fix in order that ASPSPs buy in? And I will be a bit provocative. I think that we need a great pivot. And if you take example of open banking, what we should do is to allow merchants to connect to ASPSP's APIs, because then the whole setup is not only for other financial institutions, but it's for the market, for the demand side of the market, and the reciprocity. So my assessment is that if there was more reciprocity, for example, if I open my account to the external world, I mean, if I open the account of my users to external world, then I'm getting the information about my users, what they do outside my account. Then most likely that would be considered and perceived as sort of reciprocity, which justifies losing the customer by opening to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. Very, very thorough and insightful answers, so thank you very much. And maybe, Francois, to get your perspective really on how we can leverage open banking and instant payments. We've heard some of the opportunities that lie there, but would welcome your insight in terms of how we can leverage of that to increase revenue, attract new customers, open up collaboration, and ultimately increase revenue. And two, would welcome your view on what you feel is necessary for wider scale adoption of instant payments and open banking.
Well, Brian, thank you for having me this afternoon. I find myself in a challenge not to repeat what my colleagues have already said, but I think I will hang on a sentence that Oliver used, which is it good enough to be wanted? And I thought that was really a very strong statement, because ultimately the key performance indicator is the customer appeal. Are you offering something to the customer that is actually value added, something that is not just replicating what they already have as means of payment, but is it truly adds to the value proposition? And that is actually the only way you can do that is by offering excellent service, and excellent service is supported by having really a strong backbone of technology and standards. And I will insist on the standardization. That is the only way you're going to have some success in terms of interoperability between countries. There's already a plethora of solutions out there that are developed on a national level. However, the interconnectivity depends really that you follow the same standards. If I use the analogy of card payments, what really became the defining moment for cards was when everyone started using the same standards for chip and pin, or in this case, in this day and age, with contactless, where you can pay from one country to another seamlessly. And that's really a strong value proposition for consumers. So I think instant payments, in order to be successful, it needs to appeal to consumer. You need to offer them something that is value added in terms of security, in terms of ease of use, in terms of, is it better actually to use online, for example. So that is really a principle that companies will start developing and accelerate their activities in instant payment when there is really a good standard that to be used, where you don't have to build a solution over and over again in different European countries. Also, the work that the APC, for example, is doing is critical in terms of offering rules and offering a scheme that is actually federating some business rules where everyone can actually identify really what they need to do. And then the overarching really access to the infrastructure that will be really critical for non-bank players to be able to access those systems, to be able to access really and develop their APIs, develop their apps. And that is really what the market force will actually do. So I also was quite sensitive to actually the fact that we need a really strong regulatory framework that is not a moving target. And I thought that was quite interesting from Martina from the EPI actually to make that statement that it is quite important that you have a good foundation of understanding your requirements when it comes to compliance. And if it's a moving target, then it's really hard actually to build something where you built really your compliance rules within your systems and processes. So I think those are just some of the examples, some of the things that would be the building block to making instant payment a successful means of payment that works well in Europe, and then ultimately that can connect to other systems around the world to really come to a solution that works globally.
Thank you very much, Francois. Again, very thorough and insightful answer. And maybe leveraging on that or pulling the string on that, I think you call out a statement, I think, and call out a statement that Holger made as is good enough to be wanted. Etienne, from an EPC perspective, I'd be interested in review on some of the thoughts that have been shared, I suppose, by both Francois and Christophe, and your own thoughts on the potential of open banking and payments in combination, and what DPC and its members can do to further maximize those, and maybe address some of the questions raised by other panelists.
I certainly fully agree with what was said, that at the end of the day, if the solution is not providing what the consumer wants or what the merchants wants, because it's a two-sided market, it won't fly. So basically, even though the EPC is at the scheme, the upper scheme layer level, we try actually to listen to what the market wants. We involve other market players to make sure that what we do, modestly where we are, is a sound foundation for offering what the market, the end users need. So I fully concur with that, and where we also do things which are in line with what was said earlier. Interoperability, that's where we work. In standards, that's where we work. And of course, we have been beyond what we typically did in the past by trying to work in a space that is well beyond the inter-PSP domain, precisely to put together the foundations that will enable PSPs to offer solutions to their customers that work across Europe. I also, as I already said, fully concur that we need a robust and level regulatory playing field, and there are certainly things to be done, and no criticism to those who wrote all those pieces of legislation, because when PSD1, PSD2, the SEPA regulation, AMLD were put together, I mean, nobody thought of instant payments, and nobody thought of the potential new use cases that this instant could cater for, like P2P or POI payments. So now we have to catch up with what SCT Instant can deliver, if that's what the market wants. And of course, the regulatory level playing field is critical. Speaking about the combination between open banking and instant payments, yes, there is obviously a tango there that I can see. Probably you will not be surprised that I will say that DPC is absolutely agnostic in terms of what to do with the tools that are in the toolbox of the EPC, but nevertheless, we certainly see that combination as a potential way to make use of the potential of SCT Instant, and that's why, subject to a board decision to next week, as I was saying, the EPC may embark on the development of a scheme that is actually indeed at the crossroads of open payments, as we call it, and SCT Instant, and providing harmonized functionalities that should serve the market and its end users in that space. But again, we don't say one is better than the other. We just want to be helpful in fostering harmonization, integration of payments in Europe, and whatever the market is asking, we are trying to provide. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe, Katarzyna, just to focus on some recurring themes or language being used by some of the panelists, the likes of solid regulatory framework, level regulatory playing field, interoperability. I'd be interested in your views on what the role of the European Commission is in addressing those kind of questions or challenges. And the current initiative that you are pursuing, do you feel that will address those types of challenges?
Thank you. There's been a lot of really crucial elements mentioned in this discussion. I will also refer to this statement that instant payments must be what is wanted, and this is exactly what we look at in the European Commission. In the consultation, in the public consultation, we've received quite a good number of responses from individual consumers, from retailers, and there are very recurring themes. What they want is for instant payments to be affordable. They're not ready to pay much. Well, essentially, they would, of course, prefer it to be free, but it cannot be, priced excessively. They want these solutions to be safe. They want to feel safe and secure, not exposed to any risks. And they want these solutions to work cross-border, and ideally globally, but the first basic point is that they work for cross-border payments. And unfortunately, this is not a given today. And this is why, in the European Commission, we are looking into the extent to which, addressing these issues could be done through a regulatory initiative. There's a plethora of value-added services that can go together with instant payments, and this is something that is an open playground for the market players to really innovate. But certain basic premises have to be ensured. So what I mentioned, affordability, security, safety, cross-border functioning. I mean, in the European Commission, it's not a surprise for anyone. We are in the business of the internal market. We are in the business of completing the SEPA project, the real experience for the users, consumers, and businesses of the internal market. And today, there is no internal market for instant payments, and this is what we need to address. There's been a few things said about the open banking, and I think it's also worth mentioning that to really take it to the next level and allow payment initiation service providers to really expand to new use cases, especially the physical point of sale. Again, the completion of instant payments, really, putting together all the dots is crucial. And again, there's a lot of work on the interoperability, on the API access scheme. But there's certain, gaps in the, let's say, the conditions sine qua non that we see. I wanted to also address the issue of the moving target. The legislation should not be a moving target. it's a never-ending, always present discussion that we have. We are always in the very delicate balancing between ensuring that, of course, there is a stable regulatory framework for the market players, but at the same time, the legislation has to always be relevant and not create frictions. And as has been said by some of my fellow panelists, when the EU legislation on certain areas was written, the world of payments was completely different. It's moving so fast so we need to ensure also as regulators that it remains relevant and it does not create frictions as the very minimum. And so this is what we're looking into.
Thank you very much. Maybe to pivot a little bit, Holger, maybe to talk about the digital euro. I noticed that the ECB launched its investigation, digital euro, in October 2021. I know it was discussed in an earlier presentation, some background to it. Can I just maybe ask you to touch briefly on the background, scope, timeline, but maybe more focused on what impact you see digital euro having on open banking SEPA instant schemes? Do you see it as an alternative or complementary? And would welcome your views on that. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, you rightly said that last fall. So we actually published a report. Also actually conducted the public consultation with a record high response rate of 8,000 respondents, most of them individuals. Of course, there were also a few hundred professional companies or associations responding. And we did spend several months then to process the responses, to see what was in, the important points raised. Of course, with such consultations, it's supply driven of who answers. It's not necessarily representative. I think there were like 90% male. It was not spread equally around all of the Euro area countries, but several points were interesting. For us to know what people are concerned with, which included, of course, in particular, privacy. So there we used also the first half of this year to run experiments, technical experiments with different ways on how one could actually set up a digital euro, so a retail central bank digital currency. Looked into different ways of how to ensure privacy, even if not full anonymity, in order to also allow the combating of money laundering and countering terrorist financing. So privacy, energy efficiency, can many transactions be conducted in parallel? So that was part of the work we have done. And in parallel, we have also set up actually both a detailed project plan and also recruited the project team. So on 1st of October, we have started the project. But just to be mindful, this is not a project at the end of which there is automatically a digital euro. But actually, it's the investigation phase, which will last for 2 years. At the end of it, we would have a blueprint of how a digital euro could look like, how it could be implemented. And then it will be up for the decision makers actually to take a decision. Is a digital euro something we want to have? So that's on the timeline. So that's 2 years as of 1st of October this year. On your question of how does it fit with other things, so there, I think it's very important to recall and for me to emphasize then other policy statements. Policy statements that have been done, have been made by our decision makers, and they have been very clear in saying that this will not be like a system on its own, but that actually, so it's a complement and not a substitute for other things. So it's a complement to cash. It is not meant to substitute it. It's a complement to private solution also. It's one thing which increases the choice for consumers on how to pay. It also helps that, at this moment, cash, the euro is a unit of account for everything. And to keep it that way also in the digital world, it is also important to have a medium of exchange, a central bank money also as a medium of exchange in a digital world, which cash can just not do. So that could be one reason for issuing it, but also then we have emphasized that actually we would want to rely on actually other players in the market. So we are emphasizing the role of supervised entities then also in the distribution of a digital euro. And while basic services, payment services of the digital euro would, according to the statements already made, be for free, there would also be value-added services that could be offered and I'm sure will be offered then by private entities. So from that point of view, also there, given the ongoing trend on the demand side for cash and that less transactions are being done by cash. So there will really be quite some place also for digital payment of any kind. So it's not a crowding out of private solution.
Thank you. And maybe, Francois, just picking up on a point Holger mentioned and maybe pivoting a little bit, was a reference to increased choice for customers. And we've heard about some of the benefits for consumers. Ultimately, would welcome your view on what you feel the benefits, and we've heard quite a lot about the benefits, but potential risks for consumers to the disruption to the market that could be introduced by various initiatives.
So specifically on the CBDC, on digital euro?
No, I suppose it is like as we look for increased competition, disruption to the current payments market, and the various initiatives there, be it the digital euro, open banking, instant payments.
Yeah, it's an exciting space, and I mean, there's been quite a lot of developments, I think, in the last 15, 20 years for consumer payments, and then less visible what's been done on the tokenization and B2B. So, you know, the financial services have always been quite active in terms of technology innovation and introducing new means of payment. And in this era, it's no less different, where those things, there will be disruption. If I knew, then I would probably not be sitting here, because I'll be a billionaire introducing the most successful one. But I think, you know, the survivor is going to be whatever adds value to certain customers that is not there today, or that introduces a new service that is actually, you know, so significant that it replaces what they already had, or that's really what a disruptive innovation is. Now, these things, I think, have potential to be really great contenders in terms of instant payment. Or open banking is a very exciting place. I don't think the market has quite sussed out actually what is a successful, you know, open banking business. A lot of the EPIF members and a lot of the fintechs are day-to-day coming up with very customer-orientated services, and that's an exciting space as well. So I think this is all very, very, you know, interesting to be in business and to actually start to contribute to offering the new services. But we need the help, of course, of regulators. We need the help of institutions to provide really the bedrock and to provide the architecture, at least legally, to offer really a consensus and integrated service across Europe. On the CBDC side, I think the needs of Europe are not the same of Nigeria or the Bahamas, where there's much more unbanks. So it will be interesting actually to have a full-fledged CBDC in Europe that will replace some of the cash, and that hopefully the private sector can offer also as a means of payment, either in an instant or either on cards or either online. It doesn't really matter. It's just another way of paying, another way of offering services. And I think the richer really the fan of payment of all these products that are going to be Europe is what's going to make Europe successful. It's not just instant payment. It's just not just open banking. it's really the sum of all that will create really a buoyant and competitive space in Europe, where we will want to see all those different means of payment flourish.
Really thoughtful. And if you come up with that solution to make you a billionaire, would be happy to share it with me. I'm happy to help. And Christoph, I suppose we've spoken about open banking a lot, and Francois gave an excellent overview of what the potential is and what the future could hold. Open finance becoming a growing topic, and I suppose the next generation or evolution of open banking. Based on experience to date, would welcome your thoughts on what the expectations are, development you would expect regarding open finance. For example, is it focus on data or transactions, or where do you see that going?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can I hear you?
Okay, fine. So open finance indeed is not only a buzzword, it's a growing concern on one hand and great opportunity on the other hand. I'm especially connected and attached to this concept because I'm very much involved in everything about and around the open banking, and it is in the natural step forward. So it is interesting to see how it develops in principle regarding the attitude of the Commission. So if you look in the retail payment strategy, the OpenX was anything, even that far as social media. That was September 2020. If you look at the tender specification that was issued a couple of months ago, so the open finance questions relate now to accounts in banking space, which is, if you compare to the PSD open banking, which is savings and credit accounts. And the next step would be, according again to the tender specification, investment, insurance, and pensions. But so looking from my perspective, so a man involved heavily in developing everything around open banking, what are the next steps? What are what is the outlook for the EU depends heavily on one strategic dilemma, which is quite heavily discussed now in the bodies, at least I'm involved in. That includes the SEPA API, SEPA Payment Account Access Multi-Holder Stake Group, or European Financial Data Expert Subgroup of the European Commission. So the major question is, should we add the open finance stream to open banking or not? Should it go completely separately? And this dilemma is really visible in many dimensions. The most common answer from why it is a dilemma, because if we add the open finance stream to open banking, then we add complexity. Definitely we add complexity, and we postpone the launch of the SEPA payment account access functionalities. But on the other hand, we have learned so much when working on the open banking that it makes completely no sense to repeat this work in open finance streams, like, for example, under DG Connect or so. What I understand from the community is that the preference is that it's disconnected from open banking, in the sense that it's not added to the complexity, it's not added to open banking. That we work open finance in a separate stream. Very often we hear from our colleagues that the payment guys, the bank guys, have no knowledge of the other streams, like investments, like insurance or pensions. I'm not so sure. I hope that and I'm actually sure that we would be sufficiently equipped with competence and process management to handle it. So the only difference, actually, the real difference which I see, is that in open banking, to some extent, and actually to a great extent, Zofort and Trustly did the work for us. So they really tested a real life products, and we just translated it partially into regulations, partially into self-regulation. We do not have such use case in all the other sectors, in investment, insurance, or pensions. We have no Zoforts, no Trustly that did it anyway. So it is the key difference. But again, at the same time, we have a very active industry, especially mostly coming from the US, which connects APIs with no observance of regulations. And so if you look at the services of providers like American Zapier or Czech Integromat, they really do interconnections between any provider that has API. And then don't need PSD2 or open finance regulations and so on and so on. So we have this very strategic dilemma. My take, and having seen all what I have seen in the recent almost now 7 years, because I was a member of the first consortium to deliver the PSD1 impact study, and we have been writing the chapters on open banking. I remember it very well. So having it in mind now, what my recommendation would be is, let's make it so the same way as open banking, but let's make it one step behind. If you look in the history of open banking, we had this PSD2 proposal, then we had the SEPA API evaluation group, then we had the ERPB API work group, and now we have the SEPA payment account access multi-stakeholder group. So let's make it the same way, but one step behind. Let's not add open finance to open banking as it is now, so just in the development of a scheme, but I would strongly recommend not to disconnect open finance from open banking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, very thought-provoking. I said at the introduction, I don't have a crystal ball to see what the future holds. I may, though, ask the panelists to look into their crystal balls and give their thoughts, hopes, expectations, or summary of their positions in terms of where we see instant payments, open banking, digital euro in the future. So a hypothetical question, I suppose, for the time being, but would welcome thoughts of people. And maybe Holger, if you would mind starting with you on your insight into that.
Okay, so on the digital euro, of course, my hope is that actually the investigation phase will be successful, and certainly this is not just my hope, also my expectation. That's why we work there on the project plan, and that afterwards we will have a good blueprint, and then it will depend on the decision makers whether they say go or no go or not yet. But that at least they have all of the information to take a reasoned decision then for the digital euro to go ahead or not. And of course, if it goes ahead to be successful, and that's quite interesting because there we will have to strike a balance between being successful as a means of exchange, as a unit of account, not too successful though as a store of value, because we do not want to rock the financial system by attracting too many, substituting for bank deposits, etc. So that of course is an expectation that I have on that front. And on instant payment, just to be very clear, I'm actually really upbeat on the potential that instant payment offers. I think that actually there we play a good role on the interoperability, and hence that actually this making it possible to be reachable, making it possible to pay everywhere will then be a given. There's still this issue of what I said, is it good enough to be wanted? But also there, I'm hopeful, including on the other aspects that I mentioned on the standardization, where we are helping, also with the Commission and with many players who are otherwise also competitors in the Euro Retail Payments Board, for example, on setting standards where this is useful, and on helping on other aspects of interoperability. So that is good, and I'm hopeful that actually that instant payment, that those that actually the potential can actually be achieved over time. No, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Katarzyna, your thoughts on the question, please.
Yes, well, thank you. The good thing about these kind of questions is I probably can say whatever comes to mind, and because we are in a guessing game. But I can definitely tell you where we hope we will be, and our hope is definitely that we really the instant payment do become the new normal in a very short term. and that those that made investments and saw the potential early on can actually start really benefiting from these investments, and they can really both PSPs and fintechs can really leverage on that, helped also by other initiatives on the interoperability, technical standardization, and everything else that was mentioned. All together, using also the opportunities of the open banking, and also leveraging on other initiatives like digital ID, for example, and really building something that is taking payments to the next level, that is really convenient and useful for the European citizens and businesses, and that they really truly, businesses and consumers in Europe have really more choice. So we have a little bit more, competition and more variety, because that always drives innovation, and it always is better overall for everyone. And I think, obviously our objective is to make sure that all these work streams and all these projects in the area of payments, that we ensure that they're complementing each other, that they can support each other, and the market can use whatever combination they see fit in a good way to come up with innovative solutions, and that there's no frictions between different initiatives. So that's of course always the objective for us, and again that we create a real internal market for payments in the EU. Thank you.
Thank you. Francois, would welcome your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit more on open finance, because I think I've made already the point on the other initiatives. I think it's incredibly exciting, but I think we need to achieve a very successful open banking first. Open finance opens to data to other industries and other finance players. So a good data strategy is really the backbone of having a successful open finance framework. And I think data will be incredibly important in the way we protect the privacy of our card members, and the way we actually share data in a transparent manner and safely. So that's really, I think, the foundation is data, and to be able to have reciprocity in terms of making sure that the PSPs and the payment institutions gets also data back, and not leak all their customer data to big tech players. So we have to be very careful here that there's reciprocity, there's a level playing field in terms of getting benefits, and of course the customer is ultimately protected and not having leakage of their own private data to anyone. So I think it's an incredible space, and I think it will happen. In what time frame, I don't know, but I think it's very important that actually we have a good data framework to support those initiatives.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Christoph, closing remarks.
So on the back of the Holger's words, I again will be a bit provocative, and I expect that our main concern in medium term will be how to ensure that the technology is not too much successful. So having seated in the open finance work groups and having witnessed all the use cases that have been presented by especially the insurance industry, I'm sure that the same way we are proud of how we approach privacy in Europe, we will work on how to stop technology in a certain moment, because it seems that at least this is the thing I have in finance. We stopped doing anything else but technology. If you look at the HoReCa industry, hotels, restaurants, like automotive, they still do the old good business development. It seems like we don't do anything else but digitization, and it really reaches very sensitive spaces. So to me, medium term is about where we stop technology, where should we stop in order not to distract us from our human beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I know we're coming to the close, so Etienne, final words for you.
Yeah, I think we have all said more or less the same thing, that the world of payments will be, of course, more open, more digital, more European and more instant. And what we try to do is precisely to go in that direction. But at the end of the day, whatever we do, because we are payment experts, it's what the consumer will decide and what the merchants will decide. And also something that I think is very important, maybe going back to what Christoph was saying, we should really pay attention to security, because all the nice and good things that we are discussing would actually be totally damaged, maybe forever, if there were to be serious security issues with them, and the trust that the consumers and the users need to have would be seriously damaged. And then I think in order to make really European payments move, I think time is of the essence. There are many other players, and I think there are key decisions that are going to be taken that will impact on the landscape. And both of them have been, two of them at least have been discussed today. There is, of course, on the CBDC front and on the EPI front, and all of that may actually make the payment landscape very much different from what we have been familiar with. But I don't have a crystal ball, so we'll have to wait. Thank you.
And thank you. And maybe in those final thought-provoking words, I'd just like to thank all panelists for their time today. I certainly am much more knowledgeable now than I am an hour and a quarter ago. So really appreciate your time, your insight, your expertise, and the thoroughness and excellence of your responses. So thank you very much for participating today. I would maybe remind people that Day 2 starts tomorrow, 17th of November at 14:25, opening remarks by Eli, and for half a day or quite a lot of discussion on AML, so more a provocation of thinking there again. So thank you very much again to the panelists for today, and thanks to all who have attended throughout. So thank you.